I want to welcome my next guest to the Gray Man podcast. I've known her for like, I don't know, like 20 plus years, like forever.
From
You know what
middle
I'm saying?
school.
She went to school. You was in the same grade as my brother too, weren't you, Philip?
Yes. Yep.
Yep. So yeah, she was in the same grade as my little brother. They went to the same school and everything. Then she ended up coming to school with me because I'm a little bit older, but like I said, I've known her forever. And it's definitely somebody that we need to have on here because one of our focuses is like military law enforcement and survival. And even she was not in military, she's not a survival expert, but she was in law enforcement, but not in law enforcement in the capacity that you would think like a deputy or a police officer. She was actually a 911 dispatcher. And I want to go ahead and let you introduce yourself because here on this show we don't introduce anybody because like operation security, stuff like that, even though you're not really in the game anymore. But you know what I'm saying? But with this operation security, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about my introduction. But hello, I am Tiana. As he stated, I used to be a 911 dispatcher. I was a dispatcher for about 6, almost 7 years for the city of Columbus in Ohio. So I worked for Columbus Police Department. I'm a little removed from it. However, I still love the job. There's a few reasons why I decided to leave, but definitely was a great experience and something that I think has helped me be able to transition and do other jobs since. I think it's like a really good resume builder because it definitely speaks volumes if you're able to like do that job on a day-to-day
Hmm.
basis.
Awesome. So 6 to 7 years, you definitely have some experience that you can talk about. So we're gonna start from the beginning, since it's your first time on the show. Where are you from?
I am from Columbus, Ohio, born and raised.
Okay. And Columbus, Ohio. So born and raised. What was you like as a child, would you say?
I was a good child. No,
No
so
doubt.
I think I was a good child. Of course, like most women or girls, had a mouth growing up. But I grew up in the short north. So I grew up when it was like the short north posse was
Hmm.
like the so I grew up around a lot of like gangs and drugs and things like that. My parents are recovering addicts, I would say,
Hmm.
alcoholics addicts. So I grew up, I wouldn't say like the roughest childhood because I
Yeah.
still have both of my parents, but definitely went through some changes and seeing them go through their transition of like being on drugs to getting clean. But yeah, I think I was a fairly good child.
Yeah. And like I said, I've known her forever. I was a knucklehead, and my brother that grew up where like, yeah, we used to get in trouble all the time. So, nah, she was good people, man. So I can definitely confirm that. So the schools you went to, I know you went to, we'll say you went to Ridgeview for middle school, and then you ended up
Mhm.
going to Centennial Elementary
No,
School.
I went to Fort Hayes.
Oh,
I
you went to Fort
transitioned.
Hayes.
Yes.
Okay.
So I wanted to go to Centennial. I didn't get accepted because it wasn't my home school.
Really?
Um, yeah, so I ended up, but everyone else from Ridgeview ended up going to Centennial. So I was there, but I actually ended up going to Fort Hayes. The elementary school, for the most part, I went to Wyland Park because that was the school
Hold
in
on,
it.
hold on. You said you went to now. For those that don't know out there, like Fort Hayes is a school for gifted and talented like artists, musicians, anyway, people in the arts like models, musicians and stuff like that. And she's telling us this is what she's telling us that she didn't get accepted into going to the private the
The
private
private, what?
art school,
Private.
the private public art school.
I like that. The private public. That
Yeah.
explains it pretty well.
So you went to the private public school because you wasn't good
Mhm.
enough to go to the public school.
I don't know why they didn't accept me, but everyone else was accepted. So that's why I said all my friends was there. So I was there. But
Yeah, sure did, sure did.
yeah.
That's what I remember. So after high school, you went to Wyland Park. You said so. Then Ridgeview, then not Centennial, even though Centennial was a school, but Fort Hayes. And then
Yeah.
after school, did you end up going to college or trade school?
Yeah, initially I did. I went to Wright State University, but
Out in
I got
Dayton.
pregnant. Yep,
Okay.
yep. So I got pregnant and I was fearful that I was not going to be able to financially take care of my child.
Hmm.
So I came back home so that I could find a job. So I actually have never finished college as of yet, but yeah, I initially went away to Wright State.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna sidetrack because I know you went to Fort Hayes. Is that where you? Because I remember when we were younger, and you and even after school, you were into modeling, and can you tell us briefly what that was like and how long you did that? Because and going to Fort Hayes now that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Is that where that started?
Probably because I was really into theater. I love theater. However, really what got me into modeling, I met Miss Black Ohio
Okay.
one year. Was like really into her and her journey. She was actually a plus size girl, and so to like learn of her journey and that she won the pageant as a plus size girl, competing against
Yeah. Yeah.
regular as girls, I just thought that was really inspiring. Um, so initially, I was going to go into pageantry or into that pageant system,
Hmm.
and I ended up getting against it because they had to wear swimsuits, and I just didn't want to wear. I didn't want to present myself in like a
No doubt.
swimsuit. So I found another pageant system that I was interested in, and it was geared towards plus size women, and it was Miss Plus America.
Yeah.
So I ran for that. I won Miss Ohio Plus America in 2012 and competed nationally. So being in pageantry is what actually like started my modeling
Hmm.
because people me to come and do appearances and model in different shows. So that's what really got me into modeling at that time.
I remember that um, back then you had brought a lot of attention to that that side of that field because that wasn't something that people would have even me in particular I was not even aware that that modeling went and did all aspects like plus size and then Miss Black Ohio stuff like that because you only think of the modeling thing you think of like or at least me you think of like I don't know, like magazines,
Mhm.
runway, stuff like that. And it's definitely not. It doesn't usually include people that look like us, or
Right.
people that are plus size or whatever. So that was definitely. I definitely want to say that that was you that shined the light on that for me and a lot of people around me. So moving right along, um, what actually sparked your interest in getting into law enforcement?
So my aunt, my father's sister, is actually, or now she's retired, but she was a police officer. So I just remember growing up, when she would be in her uniform, I would be so afraid of her because she had her gun on her hip, and I was always afraid that if I did something wrong, she would arrest me. Um, so
Yeah,
always had a lot of respect for her. I wasn't like scared of her, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
just, peace is authority. So I've always been a very hard worker, always worked at least two jobs at a time. And so one day my aunt just told me, she was like, they're testing for 911 dispatchers. And I'm like, okay. She was like, I really think you should take the test because it's job security.
Mhm.
I had children at the time. So she was like, one thing is for certain is if you have that job, you will be able to take care of your children.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I was like, what does it hurt? I went to go take the test and I passed. But even with passing the test, there's still more to it. It's not like, okay, you passed the test and you have a job.
Mhm.
So it still took, I think, from the time that I took the test to the time that I actually started, it was well over a year,
Wow.
the entire process.
Wow.
So,
I did not know that because I remember when I had applied for CPD one time and you worked at CPD. You were the one telling me like, yo, this is the process. You need to talk to this person. I'm gonna put my name in the email, let them know I know who you are. And but that whole process for me, even though I never actually worked for CPD, I ended up working for a hospital agency and then going out to Virginia and becoming a deputy out there. Um, that whole process from start to finish was probably at most 9 months. But you knew
Oh,
within 6 months as a police officer that you would have that job. So you went and filled out the application. You took the test, the civil service test. When did you realize that this was going to be a career choice for you at that time?
yeah. So once they finally contacted me back, months and months and months later,
Yeah,
after learning that I passed the test, um, I was like, oh, wow. They reached out to
yeah,
me.
yeah,
But then with them reaching out to me, it was like, I believe like an 18-page application that I had to fill out.
yeah. That's
It was
crazy.
very,
Yeah,
very detailed. So I think I turned it in literally the last day that I could turn it in because it was so much information that they
yeah.
needed. Um, and at the time, I was working a job,
So
the
I'm sorry.
job
You
that
guys had like a we had a PHQ. You had the PHQ also as a 911 dispatcher?
no, not necessarily. So you have the civil service exam. I don't know what the application was called, but it was very detailed, like, the last 10 years or last 10 addresses, something crazy. I have to
Yeah,
go back
yeah.
and ask my people,
Yeah, that's similar
so
to
that
what we had as a PHQ, where
oh,
every job you ever worked ever,
yeah,
contact
pretty
information, email address, you know what I'm saying? And then the last,
yeah.
10 years of addresses. So you had to do the same type of thing as a 911
Yeah.
dispatcher. Well, I did not know
Yeah.
that.
I think they have lessened the requirements,
Yeah.
but I mean, I had to do a polygraph
You
exam.
did?
Yes, they had to
Wow.
go in my neighbors.
Wow.
So at that I did it, it was more intense. I know I've helped other people through the process since, and it doesn't seem as intense, and it could be because they desperately need people.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
they, it may either be taking too long or it could be weeding people out, more people out than they need. So yeah, at the time that I went through it, it was very, very intense.
Wow. I didn't know you had to go through all that. And you said the hiring process was well over a year.
Yes, for me, so part of the reason why it was a little over a year was because I scored in the 80 band. So when you take like a civil service exam,
Yeah.
you can score different bands. So 90 band is the higher band, and then you have 80 band, and then you have 70 band. If you score below 70 band, you don't. That means you didn't pass. Pretty much, you're not going to be included, and it's very rare that they go into the 70 band. By the time they would go to the 70 band, it's probably time for a new test anyway.
Hmm.
So part of that is because I scored in the 80 band. And then just, I guess, to give you an idea of what the test is like, because some people may want to know, like, what,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
definitely.
probably the
Shoot.
I had
Yeah.
when people are like, hey, I want to be a 911 dispatcher, what is it that I need to do? Um, a lot of it is common sense, I would
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
but some is just speed because you are literally taking phone calls of people's emergencies and you have to be able to hear and you have to be quick with it. So you have to be able to type and you have to have really, really good memory. So at the time that I took the test, they would say, let's say, they will give you a list of numbers like 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 6, 8, 9, 10, and then you have to once it stops, then you have to remember those numbers and you have to type it all into the computer as much as you can remember.
Yeah.
um, you also have to be able to type fast, obviously. They will give you like a map and give you scenarios and say, okay, this is the emergency, which unit would you send based on like where the units are at on the map, and pretty much you're going to send the closest unit. But you also have to consider things like, okay, if it's a high risk run, let's say it's a fire, you're
Hmm.
going to send officers and you're going to send a firefighter. Let's say it's someone with a gun. You can't just send one officer on that run. You have to send more than one officer. So it's things like that they're testing, like your one, common sense, like I said, but
Hmm.
also like just decision making, and I'm trying to think, is there anything? Of course, they test for standard like English and spelling and things like that as well. But I think the hardest is like the memorization and just being really, really quick.
And this is the test to get the job.
Mhm.
Oh wow, okay.
Yes.
So we're gonna fast forward. You told us a little bit about the hiring process. That's I didn't realize it was that in depth and that involved to be a 911 dispatcher because it's not like, or maybe I'm wrong because I really don't know what it is that you guys do or did. I didn't I didn't realize it's that involved because um, you don't have contact with the public, so to speak. So
Mhm.
or maybe you do when they
Right.
call in. I'm not sure. I guess we'll get to that in a little bit. But once you finally got hired, did you have to attend an academy? And if so, like what was that like? How long was it?
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh gosh, how long was it? I don't remember exactly. Let's think. So yes, when you get hired on, you are in a training class. I want to say the training class was about 12 or 16 weeks. Um, it could vary, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction,
Hmm.
as well as duties. Some jurisdictions you might only do call taking, some you may do call taking and dispatching. So at the time, I was doing both call
So
taking and
I'm
dispatching.
sorry. There's a difference.
Yes,
Wow.
some jurisdictions. So some jurisdictions you can just be a call taker, meaning you just take 911 phone calls all day. You
Yeah.
enter into a CAD system, and then there's a dispatcher that will dispatch the run.
Mm,
And then some jurisdictions you can just be a dispatcher where you don't take the 911 phone calls, and then some you can be both. So I was both. I
yeah.
was both a call taker as well as a dispatcher. So that training is obviously a little longer because you have to learn both ends of the business.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to say the classroom portion was either 12 or 16 weeks. And then you have like on the job training where you're paired up with another dispatcher. And those are in 4-week increments. And I believe you go through that for a total of 16 weeks as well, because you go through 4 different people.
Yeah.
And you switch different shifts. So one for the first 4 weeks, you may be on second shift. The second 4 weeks, you could be on third shift because you want to learn all aspects. Like every shift is slightly different. You
Yeah.
deal with some, different types of runs. Obviously, first shift is where you might have a bank being robbed. You're not going to necessarily have a bank robbery on third shift, right? Banks aren't open.
That makes sense.
So it's important to expose you to all the shifts so you can get an idea for them all.
Wow. Okay. That's intense. I didn't. I have a whole lot more respect for you guys, man. Okay. So, what was your first day on shift like? Like when you got out of the academy
Yeah.
and you told you on the floor, what's up? What was the first day like?
Very nerve-wracking, right? Because you're like, now you have to combine everything that
Yeah.
you learned in class.
Now you're doing it for
And
real.
exactly. And you're not as fast, obviously, as a person that's been there for a while.
Hmm.
So you're just really, and they teach you, like the type of questions to ask, what's important, what an officer would need to know for their safety as well as the safety of others going into it. But you're always wondering, like, should I have asked more? Could I
Yeah.
have gotten more information? Did I hear everything correctly? Especially if it's a true emergency where
So
someone is
you
calling.
guys have those. I'm sorry, I mean to cut again, but you guys have those like moments of reflection later, kind of like we do. Like, man, could I have could I have like done this different, or could I have done that different to avoid this use of force, or whatever? Like, you guys have those type of kind of
For sure.
withdrawal thoughts, like, yo, if I'd have just asked this question, maybe, or told him to go out of this room, I guess you kind of would have. Like, if I'd have told him to jump out the window, maybe the guy wouldn't have got in the room, something like that. So you guys deal with that too.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Especially, I know with me, as well as many others I work with, anything involving children,
Yeah.
where a child is hurt, obviously that will mess with anyone. So sometimes you're like, okay, did I tell them? You have to be careful because you don't want to tell someone to do something and then they end up being hurt as a result of what you told them to do. And it's hard to determine if you should tell someone to do something because you're not physically there to see it.
Yeah.
Um, So, you sort of have to guide them to use their best judgment and just support them through it. Um, unless, I mean, it's just very clear, like, okay, you have to do this right now, like, or else.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you just have to, they're your eyes, they're the officer's eyes into the situation,
Hmm.
and you have to all of the information that you can because the officer is going into that blindly.
Yeah.
So, it's like twofold because you're worried about your officers. The dispatchers develop a relationship with the officers, right?
Definitely. Definitely.
So now they're friends, their brother, and they want to make sure that they're safe. So you're worried about whoever is pulling up to the scene if it's a real, emergency, and then you're worried about the person that you're on the phone with as well.
Wow. So, first day, do you remember your first call?
I don't remember my first call, but there are some calls that I remember that, I don't think I'll ever forget that just, stick with me. Um,
I was gonna say, go ahead and tell us one if you don't mind.
yeah, one that really, really sticks with me is a lady. She called. At the time, I was taking the phone call. She said that her husband was threatening to kill her, and she was like, "He's going to kill me." There was a protection order. He didn't care about the protection order at all.
Yeah.
Um, so, of course, I took all the information, sent up the run. The officers arrived on the scene. They were there for quite a while. They couldn't find him. They searched the neighborhood. They could not find him. Um, so, eventually they cleared and went on about their day. Not even maybe 10 minutes after the officers left, I switched from taking phone calls to now dispatching.
Yeah.
As soon as I sat down to dispatch that area of town, the first run that came in was back to that address. She had called back, or no, I'm sorry, she hadn't called back. Her children had called back. He had came in the house and shot her in the bathroom. So that really, like, I get chills going down my body because
Yeah.
I wasn't the last person to talk to her, obviously, because the officers were there, but I was one of the last people to talk to her. And I remember the fear in her voice. And I knew what she was saying at the time. Like, she was scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and, I know it messed with the officers too, because they did all that they could while
Hmm.
there the first, but they couldn't find him. But he was lurking around somewhere waiting for them to leave. And he finished the job that he set out to do.
Wow. Oh man, that's crazy. So, I guess we'll kind of decompress out of that. What kind of calls did you typically handle?
All calls. So, of course you have some of the calls like that
Hmm.
that will last, in my memory forever. But then you also have some of the funny calls, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a nice balance. And at least, with me being a 911 dispatcher, I will say you take more non-emergency calls than true emergencies.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
people call and they're not real life emergencies. But I've had some funny calls. Like I had a call where this guy said he was having fun with his girlfriend.
All right.
And as a result, what happened was someone bust into their bedroom as they were having fun and started beating up the girlfriend. So when I asked for like the girlfriend's name, he was unable to give me her full name. He just gave me like a nickname, and I'm like, okay, where are they at now? Where's the man at? He's still in the room beating on the woman. Where are you at? He's like, I'm outside in the backyard, and I'm like, okay, I have officers on the way. So the officers arrive on scene. I'm still on the phone with him, and the officer's like, "We're in the backyard. We don't see him. Can you ask exactly where is he at, or can he come out and meet us?" So I'm like, "Hey, the officers are there. Can you go and meet them? Do you see them?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, can you go meet them?" He's like, "Well, I can't." I'm like, "Why can't you?" He's like, "I'm on the roof." So he
No, yo,
had.
you know what? I totally believe you because in this business, what I've learned is you cannot make this stuff up, man.
Yes, he literally had.
That's
And then
crazy.
what happened was
Ended up on the roof.
the real boyfriend was the one who busted in the
Yeah,
room.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And instead of him protecting the woman, he he hops out of the window and jumps onto the roof and was waiting on the roof until the officers got there.
That's
So
crazy.
yes.
That's funny. So what was your op tempo like in there? Like, was it fast paced? Was it like as a 911 dispatcher, back to back calls?
Oh, it depends on the day.
Okay.
Obviously, some days are slower than others. You really can't predict call volume because you don't know what emergencies could happen, and it also depends on the shift. So
Hmm.
each shift presents different challenges. So first shift you're gonna have more like accidents in the morning during rush hour. So you're gonna get a lot of accident phone calls. Um, you could get like bank robberies, things like that. Second shift, you're going to get more domestic disputes because people are starting to get home from work. You're going to get lost children because they haven't returned home from school
Yeah, yeah.
or they're outside and they haven't returned in. And in third shift, you're going to get more of the like, typically more of the shootings, more of the like also domestic disputes from
Hmm.
people drinking.
Yeah,
Um, and like club disturbances
yeah,
and things
definitely.
like that. And then I like probably about 4 a.m. quiet, right? Dead. It's hard to stay awake
Yeah, yeah,
because sleeping at that time.
yeah. That's the good time. But that
Yeah.
that peace never usually
Unless
lasts.
you've been working a 16-hour shift and then
Yeah,
you're like, okay, I need something to keep me awake.
no doubt. So what's the best advice that you got from somebody that was in the field when you first started out?
So this is not really advice to like doing the job,
Hmm.
but financial advice. Because uh, each jurisdiction again is different
Yeah,
in
yeah.
how they pay. But with where I was at, we offered a lot of overtime, a
Hmm.
lot of overtime. So with the overtime, I was able to make really, really good money. Like I said, prior to being a dispatcher, I used to always work two jobs.
Hmm.
So when I became a dispatcher, I didn't need to work two jobs. I would just pick up extra hours, and if I needed extra money, I was able to pay off my student loans in 2 years.
Wow.
And working there. So the best advice that I was given was um, do not utilize overtime like for your bills.
Yeah.
So don't determine your bills or how much you can spend based on the amount of hours that you're
Don't create a
working on.
lifestyle from your special duty. Yeah, I got you.
So I would say that to me was the best advice because you do get used to the money, and what happens is when I got to a point of like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, I was making great money. It was hard without my college education. It was hard to find a job making that exact amount of
Hmm.
money right away. So when I left, I took a significant pay cut, not on the hourly. My hourly was similar, but because I wasn't working the overtime, the
Hmm.
pay cut was significant. So it was good that I listened to that advice and I didn't determine, I didn't live beyond my means.
So, moving forward, that was the advice that was bestowed on you. Do you
Mhm.
have any advice for anyone trying to get into this field, say they want to be a 911 dispatcher, and they're listening to the story that you're telling, and it's something that's sparking an interest in them? Do you have any advice that you want to share for maybe an up and coming or someone actually starting that's already there, that's just kind of starting to get ready to get their feet wet, so to speak, in the business?
Yeah, I would say don't allow the people around you or even the community to make you become jaded.
Hmm.
I think especially when you go into a field like that, you want to help and you are like really excited to be able to help. But over time, hearing like stories and working the hours and being around just negativity, from just people who've been doing it for a really, really long time.
Hmm.
Don't let people rub off on you and become jaded. Remember why you got into the to that job to begin with, and it's truly to help people. Um, and I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I decided to leave. It wasn't because I was jaded; it was because I was getting tired of some of the people around me, and it was just becoming like a toxic environment.
Okay.
one of many reasons. It wasn't the only reason. But yeah, just don't become jaded because it is easy to become jaded in that field.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree because on the outside, and even in a jail setting, one thing that affects guys that I guess that's in my side of the world is burnout because like
Mhm.
you'll hear me talking about it in other interviews too that nobody ever really calls us to say, hey man, we just want to let you know you're doing a great job. They
Not at
usually
all.
call us because yeah, they usually call us because like you said, this guy's trying to kill me, or somebody just broke
Mhm.
into the house. I cannot find my kids, or some and it's like 100 miles an hour. Um, well, it can be like 100 miles an hour going to every situation. And a lot of those times we are only given limited information. And because you said the caller is your is your eyes into the situation, and you have to relay that message. And knowing what I know from like experience in the military and in experience just in law enforcement, period, is that when someone is gripped with fear and a heightened sense of self-preservation, they usually have
Mhm.
tunnel vision. They don't really know what else is going on around, or they have a hard time describing. um I'm in the yellow house but the house is white, you know what I'm saying, or something like that. I'm in the upstairs room to the left but it's to the right, you know what I'm saying. And you don't really, so you kind of have to, we get in the description, we get in the information, but we still have to kind of filter through it too. So yeah, definitely the jaded part for us would be like burnout. So
Yes,
definitely
absolutely.
understand. Yep, and I can relate a little bit to that too. And I've seen some guys like that, and gals that that's happened to. So since you are no longer in law enforcement,
Mhm.
do you miss it?
I actually do. I really do. I loved being a 911 dispatcher. I left for a few reasons. But now, with the pandemic and, you know, America transitioning to remote work,
Hmm.
I love being remote.
Okay,
So sometimes I've, I've considered, like, should I get back into it? I'm like,
that was going to be my next
let's
question.
go.
That was going to be my next. Do you have any plans on going back if you do miss it?
So, no, but I do have a part-time job
Okay.
that I'm able to utilize some of those skills similar. So I do work right now for a hospital, local hospital here, where I pick up hours whenever I need, or
Okay.
want, I should say, want, and I take the incoming runs from the medic. So when a
Okay.
medic is coming in and they mark, I take all of the information about the patient that they have en route, whatever the
Yep.
situation is, and I air that to all of the on-call doctors, all of the nurses, because I work in a trauma unit, so that
Yeah.
they're ready and prepared once the
That
patient
that
arrives.
that actually sounds like it's an excellent transition. It sounds very similar, and like I said, I was an officer at a hospital, and even though I didn't talk to who your particular position directly, because sometimes we would speak to you guys at when I was at Mount Carmel West, or they would patch us in because we would be uh we would be working with some of the officers around Zone 3. So, and
Yes,
speaking of which,
deal with the issue.
were you
Mhm.
assigned to a particular zone or a precinct when you were a dispatcher?
Yeah, so yes and no. You're not really assigned, but you get on the one that you you primarily work the most.
Yeah.
But if there's need, you have to be able to work any zone. But I primarily worked zone one and zone two when I dispatched.
Okay.
So
Okay.
north and east side. And then from time to time I would do zone five, which is like the downtown area.
Yeah.
But that's pretty rare. They like to keep you in the zone that you're familiar with because you're familiar with the streets, you're familiar with the officers.
Hmm.
So it's a lot easier to keep you in a zone that you know because you just know how to work it and the officers know how to work with you. When an officer hears like a new dispatcher on the radio,
Yeah.
it's like sometimes, it's like what is it, hazing?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
to that they mess with you because they hear a new voice on the radio. So
That's funny. All right. So, in closing, basically, what's next? What can we see coming from you in the future?
Yeah, so I did state that I had not finished my degree. That is definitely something that I would like to finish. I'm very, very close to the finish line. Every time I start, something just stops.
Hmm.
It's work. Work becomes overwhelming, and I'm like, okay, let me focus on work, or let me focus on this with the kids. So I think, yeah, just finishing up my degree. And also, for the last couple of years, I haven't been modeling, so it's been heavy on my heart, and I've been
Yeah, yeah.
missing that. So I want to get back to myself and
Weren't you
probably.
weren't you starting like a kind of like an agency of some kind, like where you were bringing other girls
Yeah.
on?
Yes, yes. So, like I always say, I aspire to inspire.
Yeah.
So, I just want other plus size women to feel like happy with themselves, to feel beautiful. So I would do photo shoots
Hmm.
in the past. I would host photo shoots so that other ladies that might be interested in modeling could start building their portfolio. And then I get contacted by a lot of people for modeling gigs and things like that. So it's like, if I have a roster of girls and someone needs a model, I can send this person to them. But I've just been really removed from it the last couple of years, balancing family and work and things like that. But I think that's something I'm going to really pursue in the near future.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up. Hey, it's definitely been my pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah,
I
thank
know we kind of talk here and there like on social media, and we haven't really had a full in-depth conversation in over 20 years.
you. It's
You
been
know
a
what I'm saying? But
while.
it's
That's crazy.
yeah, it's like a, you know what I'm saying, like a here today, because when you were definitely a 911 dispatcher, and I was actually starting to become, I want to say I was becoming a deputy. I was leaving the hospital agency, and you were giving me advice as to, like, different things that you would expect. Um, and I appreciated that, man. That was cool, because obviously you were like pretty much on the front line when you get that
Mhm.
phone call, man. So you not necessarily saw it, but you knew what was going on directly. So and uh, and I haven't been exposed to that level of I haven't been exposed to that level of policing yet. So
Mhm.
I definitely appreciate the tip in the hat and knowledge of things to look out for, and but here
Yeah.
at the Great Man Podcast, we do have acronyms. And being military, former military, and also coming from the police world that we did, we operate a lot in acronyms. And the acronym that we have here at the Great Man Podcast is HOPS. And HOPS stands for, I want you to train hard, train often, train properly, and train safely.
Oh,
Peace.
I love it.
All right.